Hi, I'm Robert Osborne. Hope you're having a good weekend. We're doing our best to keep the good times coming with a double feature from one of our favorite actors here at TCM, James Garner. He was the only really major movie star I ever met who didn't seem to care a lick about the stardom he attained. Oh, he took his work seriously and always gave his best shot when it came time to do it. But for him, acting was just a job, a means to an end. He needed money to make a living in order to live his life and raise his family, and acting just happened to be his job.
It's ticklish business any way you look at it. Come on, we'll stick together.
It's Ticklish Business, the podcast devoted to honoring and deconstructing the world of classic cinema. I'm your host, Kristen Lopez.
And I'm Samantha Ellis.
Jory Clark is not here this week, but we miss her, and she is here in spirit as always. But we have a very special guest in her place today. We have the fantabulous Gigi Garner, who you might know as the amazing daughter of our favorite actor on this podcast, James Garner. Gigi, how are you today?
I am great. How are you?
Oh my gosh, we are so excited. Hopefully you haven't listened to all of our episodes because I usually am the one talking about how much I love your dad. And it gets a little weird. But we thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. You are both not just James Garner's daughter, you're an animal rights activist. You do all sorts of amazing charity work. Tell us a little bit about, what you're doing these days and the basics. Like, what's going on with you lately?
Well, thanks for asking. I appreciate that. Last year on Father's Day, I decided that I would try to merge my love of animal rescue with my father's legacy. And I created a charity, a 501c3 called the James Garner Animal Rescue Fund. And it's called JGARF. And my dad was a huge animal lover. And so I mostly spend my time on rescuing death row animals and helping other rescues with their emergencies or evacuations or medical care or food or whatever it is they need. So basically, I am a full-time philanthropist at the moment, which I absolutely adore. It's such a blessing to be able to help animals. I can't even tell you.
That is amazing. Do you remember the first pet you had at your house?
Oh, yes. When I was 6 years old, my parents got me a little puppy. It was an Australian Silkie. And I named him after my dad. So his name, this is the craziest name, but his name was Jim Jim. So I knew my dad. At 6, I knew my dad's name was Jim. We named him Jim, Jimmer, Immer, Nimmer, Bimmer, Garner. So I have a funny picture. I think I have a picture up on my website, jgarf.org, of Jim Jim and my dad somewhere. But yeah, my parents were huge animal lovers and dog lovers and grew up with a dog in the house forever. And my dad, till the day he died, he had his dogs around him.
Wow, that is awesome. I'm fostering kittens in my free time. So now that we're all, in the house, I figure I might as well do a good deed. And kitten fostering is amazing, but so exhausting at the same time.
They're babies.
Exactly. They're adorable, and you love them until they're, whining at 3 a.m, and you just want to sleep. It's like, that's why I don't have children. Okay, it's just I'm like, kittens are the happy medium.
Yeah, my rescues are my children. I don't have children either. So
Exactly.
With her.
Sam, feel free to throw in questions at any time. I know usually we were used to a full house, so we're all like talking over each other. So feel free to throw out anything.
I honestly love hearing the stories about the connection to animals, because when I look at a person and I kind of like value, is this a nice person? Is this a good person to be around? One of the first things for me is, do they love animals? So hearing that you and your dad both had such a passion for animals, that is really amazing to hear.
Aw, thank you.
To go off of that, and Sam's heard this story before, but, I'm fortunate to interview some amazing old Hollywood stars every now and then. And to go off of that, I usually determine if a person is really awesome. I asked them about your dad, James Garner, and working with him. I asked Rita Moreno about him a couple months ago. And everybody, I know you've written about this in the section of his autobiography where, everybody's talking about him, but you wrote about how, it's rare to find a person like that who doesn't have a bad word said against him. And I can tell you for a fact that is very true, because Rita Moreno was so excited. I don't think she gets asked enough about her work opposite James Garner. And she said he was the nicest person in the world, always appreciated women, had a lot of women friends, and that was very rare. And considering her struggles in the industry, he was very welcoming to her. And I was like, that's amazing. So I feel like you can tell a lot about a person by if they have a really good James Garner story.
I love that. Well, it's funny because I've heard so many stories about some of the things that my dad did that, just people have emailed me or sent me messages on social media, et cetera, about personal stories they had about my dad. And it just always amazes me about some of the things he did, because I had no idea. And my dad was very sort of quiet about, when he did something for someone, he would never tell anyone. And so I'd have to find out from the people that he did it for later on. But I've heard just some incredible stories that have really made me cry, because he wasn't perfect. No one's perfect, but he had a huge humanitarian outlook, and he was one of the people that accepted everyone no matter what. He marched on Washington, with Martin Luther King when it wasn't a popular thing to do in Hollywood, but he didn't care. It was important to him to support civil rights. And my dad stood up for the principle of the thing. And he also fought for the underdog. And that is one of the things I really, truly appreciate about him. People know him as an actor and they know him through his work, but I really don't know him through that way. I just know him through my dad as a person, as a human being. And as a human being, he was somebody who lived his life by the golden rule. And that's very rare.
Oh, I was just going to say, that's honestly so fascinating. I will say, for one thing, reading about the March on Washington in his book, The Garner Files, that was one of my favorite parts. And I love the photographs that are in the book. And I've always been a really huge fan of Diane Carroll. I had the pleasure to meet her before she passed. And seeing the picture of her and Jim holding hands in the March on Washington was really amazing to see. But on that note, I do find it really interesting, because I've met and I've talked to other children of classic film stars, and there's always that pressure to either continue their legacy or to be the resident expert on their parent. And I'm wondering if you ever feel that pressure to be like a James Garner expert, to know all of his movies.
I am not. I'm a James Garner expert in the human being, but I'm not a James Garner expert in his work. But I will say I didn't feel pressure to continue his legacy. I just really wanted to, because I want to make sure people don't ever forget him and some of the things that he did, because he did a lot of things outside of the industry that maybe people don't know about, and I just don't want people to forget him. But I did feel pressure growing up, because I am representing him, and anything that I do that could be considered not good.
Right.
Like,
no, for
sure. A lot of celebrity children get caught up in a lot of different things. And so I always did feel the pressure to honor him by being respectful and trying to do the right thing and not get into trouble and things like that. So that I did feel a little bit of pressure, because I was representing him, and if I did anything bad, it would reflect badly on him. And I loved my dad so much, I didn't want that to happen.
Well, I mean, you must have a lot of eyes on you as opposed to like the regular person.
Perhaps, but I mean, I just tried to do the right thing. I mean, he was a great role model, so that wasn't hard.
Well, to go off of that, Samantha brings up the pressure to, I guess, how can you talk a little bit about asserting your own identity? I think there's also that weird pressure to, especially with some children who maybe look like their parents, they have to be an actor, and they try to do that and continue that legacy there. How did you want to assert your own identity while still maintaining, the Garner quote unquote brand, so to speak?
Well, throughout my life, I've done some things, but I realized that I would never do anything greater than my dad has done. So it's really kind of futile in a lot of respects. I mean, I was a Christian songwriter for many years at Word Records. I wrote 3 #1 Christian songs. I've written a couple of books that were published that did well, but I realized no matter what I ever do, it's never going to be good enough. So I'm good. I'm fine with it. I love my dad. I'm very proud of my dad, so I have no problem talking about him. And I'm not worried about asserting myself. My biggest concern now is continuing on his legacy, make sure people don't forget him by having James Garner Animal Rescue Fund. That will keep his name alive, his legacy alive, and his name relevant, I hope. And that is a goal.
I know you've talked about, because you and Sam talked about this briefly, there's, with any fandom, there comes the people that kind of try to co-opt it for themselves. I know you've talked about the litany of, Facebook groups that are not necessarily associated with you or the family. How do you look at the fandom that's come up in the last couple of years over classic film, whether that's the abundance of podcasts or, the rise of Facebook groups and all of that?
Well, I am in one respect really thrilled that there are so many people that remember every single episode of the Rockford Files, and they know all the dialogue from Murphy's Romance, and they tell me they watch The Great Escape all the time. It is really heartwarming to know that people still remember him. And, it's funny because my dad was an actor for decades and decades and decades, but like the younger people really only know my dad from The Notebook.
Yeah.
They don't know him from Maverick or the Rockford Files. They know him as the old guy from The Notebook.
Unless they're nerds like Samantha and I, and then we know about The Notebook and all the older stuff.
That's always the one that I throw out to people. Like, okay,
it's funny.
You probably haven't seen Support Your Local Sheriff, but The Notebook.
But The Notebook. I'm like, have you seen The Notebook? And they're like, yeah. I go, the old guy from The Notebook. That's it.
Exactly. But I do think that it's wonderful that he sort of straddled the line between classic cinema and modern cinema. He really did make an impact because he was in, like, Atlantis as well, and that's, like a whole other audience that would not have known who he was otherwise. One of my favorite parts about Disney films is that there are so many amazing classic movie actors who did voices. And, he's definitely one of the better ones.
Oh, baby. Yeah, he did like a few really crazy things. Like one thing he did was Twilight with Paul Newman, Susan Sarandon, Reese Witherspoon, and he played the bad guy.
How have I never heard of this movie?
My dad never played the bad guy. That's one thing he did that was really unusual. Another thing he did was he never died in anything. And he did die he got an Emmy, I think, for it, for the true story of Norman Lear's brother called Heart Sounds, who was a heart surgeon. It was with Mary Tyler Moore, and he died in that. And I was there when they were filming it in Canada. And actually, I hung around a lot just because, I was there while he was filming. And he actually made me leave that day because he said it would just be too upsetting. So there's a fine line between, I've never seen The Notebook because I know that I would get too upset. My parents didn't want me to see it.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. It's upsetting in general.
So my dad, my dad wasn't always that guy from Support Your Local Sheriff or Skin Game or, Support Your Local Gunfighter. Or he also did another movie that he really hated called A Man Called Sledge, which he called A Man Called Sludge. And that was a spaghetti Western that he was forced into doing because he wanted to do something else. And he played a real ornery kind of nasty guy in that, I think. But for the most part, people recognize him for Jim Rockford.
Yeah, that leads to we had a listener question from somebody that was curious, and I'm assuming they're talking about Rockford Files, but they wanted to know what it was like. And I know you talked about, you would go to work with your dad regularly. They wanted to know what it was like to have to watch, movies or TV shows where your dad would get beaten up.
You know what? Here's the truth. I don't watch them.
Very true.
I really don't. I don't sit around watching my dad on TV and movies. It's just not a TV movie star to me. He is just my dad. And that was his work. And there was a big separation between that. So it's a little confusing because I have a Facebook site for him, the official James Garner. And sometimes I'll post a photo and then I'll get the information wrong. And they'll have to correct me. Like I posted something from Maverick, the TV show, and I said, oh, the Maverick brothers counting their cash. And somebody was like, nope, that's not. That is Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. playing, so-and-so. So I was like, oops, because I don't sit down and watch. Now, I was a production assistant, which is a glorified gopher, on the Rockford Files during the summer. So I was around there while he was filming things, and that was so fun, but it's not that much fun for me to just sit around and watch it. But I will say that I went to, this is a neat story, I don't think I told this, but I went to a film festival in Sonoma, and I was sitting with a friend of mine whose father had recently passed, and I looked at him and I said, this is going to be hard because I had to watch Fire in the Sky. Have you guys seen Fire in the Sky?
I have not, but I know of it.
It's about an alien abduction, and it's a true story, according to Travis Walton. And Travis Walton was there at that film festival that night, and I would have to watch that movie. And I really don't watch my dad's movies. I said, but it was right after my dad died, and I looked at him and I said, this is going to be awkward. I don't know how I'm going to feel about watching my dad, because he just passed away. And he said, you're so lucky that you can watch your dad anytime. He said, my dad died and I don't have anything from him. I don't have any film. I have very few pictures. And I just went, oh, good point.
Yeah.
So I am lucky in that respect.
Yeah, one star child in particular that I think of is Grace Kelly's son. He specifically says sort of the opposite. He sees her movies as a way to remember her and everything. So I think that's really interesting. But
you mean Prince Albert?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We met them and they were friends. She was friends with my dad and they came to the set of Grand Prix in Monaco when my dad was shooting Grand Prix, and they also came to the set in California when he was shooting something. I forget what it was, but I got to meet them, and they were lovely, lovely people.
That's amazing. That's so amazing. Yeah, I thought it was so fascinating to hear that. And in fact, fun fact, when Grace Kelly married Prince Rainier, they criminalized her movies in Monaco. They didn't want to see her kissing other men while she was supposed to be the Princess of Monaco. And then after they passed away, Prince Albert decriminalized her movies. So on that note, I do think it's really interesting because in one of our earlier conversations, you mentioned that you went to USC Film School. So
I did.
It's really interesting to me. Would you say that your dad's work was an inspiration there, or did you have like a separate connection to film?
I think I grew up around film, and so it was more or less a natural progression for me to major in film. Perhaps that was it. Maybe I wasn't too well versed in anything else and didn't know what else to do. I am in the process of taking over my dad's production company, and I do have a couple projects I want to make, but obviously everything's on hold right now.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating, though. I mean, that's a whole other way to continue his legacy that I think is so great.
Yeah, it would be nice. It would be nice. I think I have a few obstacles to overcome, but making a film or producing a film is not like going to film school. It's nothing like that. So I had to really educate myself into and throw myself into how to really make a film. So it's a little different.
Great. It was so fascinating. Another part of the Garner Files that really struck me as like something that I didn't know was that he, through Cherokee Productions, he did so much of the producing of his own work later on.
Oh, yeah.
And hearing him talk about the process and how he was always under budget, on schedule, was just so fascinating. Like, he was very methodical about it.
He was. I mean, he approached his career much differently than anybody else in the industry that I've ever seen. And that's why I recommend you read this book, because it's so different than, I mean, my dad was the first actor to sue a major studio. And they said, you'll never work in this town again. He sued Warner Brothers over breach of contract for Maverick. And they said, you know, you're done in this industry, blah, blah, blah. And of course, he hired a guy by the name of Frank Wells, who was an attorney, entertainment attorney. And Frank Wells ended up being the president of Walt Disney, et cetera, and other places. But my dad won. And he opened the gate for other actors who felt that they were being taken advantage of.
Right. And that was hugely, that was like a nail in the coffin for the studio system as a whole.
A little bit, but, you know, studio system is a system.
Right, exactly.
Well, to go off of that, how do you look at film today and Hollywood in general, just as a consumer?
Well, you know, I went for a long time. After going to film school, you see so many films. I was so burnt out, so I didn't see films for many, many years. I just didn't want to go to the movies. Now it's a little different. And lately I'm completely addicted to TCM, and I'm into film noir, like big time. And I don't see very many contemporary films.
You are like Samantha.
I was going to say,
I'm a crazy film noir person right now. It's insane, but I love TCM. I absolutely love it to death. And they play a lot of my dad's movies on there.
They do. I just watched Grand Prix for the first time 2 days ago.
Oh, what did you think?
I wish they played it at the TCM Film Festival, I think 2 years ago on the big Cinerama Dome. And I feel like if I had seen it on that, it probably works better than on my TV that I was working with at home. But I loved him and Jessica Walter. Like, that was, for me, so amazing to watch the two of them interact. You know, I'm not a big race car person, but the cinematography is gorgeous. I was like, damn, I wish I had gone to see that Cinerama Dome projection of it, because
I know,
you know what?
Back in 1966, it premiered at the Cinerama Dome, and you cannot imagine the excitement in the theater with the music, et cetera. It won an Oscar, I believe, for the music and for the editing as well. But they did a lot of innovative things that they had never done before, like putting a camera on the race car.
Yeah.
That had never been done before. And all the actors in there, believe it or not, had never driven even a car before.
Wow.
And they didn't have driver's licenses because they were all from Europe. And they had public transportation. They didn't really need to drive. And so my dad, though, went to Bob Bondurant driving school and learned how to be a race car driver and did all the driving and many of the stunts himself.
Wow. I don't know if you know, but I had watched a documentary, I think a couple of years ago, that was about Steve McQueen. And they had talked about how there was a little bit of a rivalry between Steve McQueen and James Garner, because Steve McQueen was filming Le Mans at the same time as he was filming Grand Prix, and they were in the same hotel room, or same hotel together. I think Steve McQueen was like one floor above, and that there was like this kind of feud between the two of them because they were both making very similar films. And I don't necessarily know if I believe that, but that's the story that this documentary was going with.
Yeah, that's not really what happened. But what's very interesting is the competition was between Steve McQueen and Steve McQueen.
That I buy.
You have a competition, you need to have two people. My dad and Steve were friends, and we were neighbors. They lived behind us. And Steve was very competitive with my dad, and my dad just wasn't competitive at all. And they went to make The Great Escape, and it just so happened that my dad hates like ties and things like that. And so my dad's wardrobe fitting was before Steve's. and there were outfits to pick from, and my dad picked a turtleneck. Well, when Steve got there, he wanted the turtleneck.
Of course.
And he was telling the director that to tell Jim that he couldn't wear the turtleneck. And of course, if you've seen the film, my dad was wearing the turtleneck.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Steve did a few things that just weren't very polite as neighbors. I don't know. You can dig into that if you want, but you know, my dad wasn't competitive with Steve, but it was always a thing like my dad was tall, dark, and handsome, and Steve was fair, blonde, and short. And it just seemed like Steve was always competing with my dad, and Grand Prix was made before Le Mans. And also, I just want to say on behalf of Grand Prix that everybody in the industry has said that Grand Prix is the best racing film if you're a racing buff.
Easily.
It is the best racing film in the history of film. And even Ron Howard said it, and he made Rush.
He did, yeah.
So there.
When Ford v Ferrari came out last year, I remember tons of people bringing up Grand Prix, too. So, I mean, it still has that longevity. Well, I know, Sam, we'd be remiss if we didn't ask. You know, you brought up film noir. What are your favorite film noirs? Because I need more recommendations.
My favorite film noir is Lolita.
Really?
I mean, it's not film noir, but it's an old film. And it's long, but I usually don't watch films more than once. But I have watched Lolita so many times because there's so much. I see something new every single time. But for whatever it's worth, Lolita is probably my favorite film.
I'm
not really
so happy.
It's a little bit of a crime thing, but it's just a weird movie. But I just watched Dilda the other day. That's not film noir, but I just love old films. Old films are fabulous. And I'd never seen really Rita Hayworth before. But wow, she was amazing.
Oh my gosh, Gilda is fantastic. Gilda is a film noir. It does count. I know. I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I think Eddie Murphy has said it counts. Yeah. So you know, he's the czar of noir. So we take his definition seriously. But no, I mean Gilda's fantastic. I was just watching the Robert Mitchum, Jane Russell noirs that they made this week, and it's great. There's oh my gosh.
Have you guys seen Lolita?
I have. Yes.
It's definitely a favorite of mine as well.
Oh my gosh, it's just the craziest. The music is like the best thing ever.
I've seen the original, I've seen the remake, and I've read the book because I was an English major. So
I love the book as well.
Many people will call me a weirdo who knows way too much about Lolita in general. So I always feel less weird when other people like the original. So yay.
You know, I wanted to bring up, if I could, my dad's favorite film, which is the Americanization of Emily that he did with Julie Andrews.
It's so good. It's so great. I love it. It's one of my favorites.
So if somebody's looking for a great intellectual, interesting film by, I believe, Patty Chayefsky wrote it.
Yes.
The Americanization of Emily with Julie Andrews is highly recommended.
I think his love for that film shines so much in the book, and especially for the script, because in the book you literally see he has pages of just the dialogue in the book. Straight out of the film. I thought that was too funny. But yeah, definitely.
And he loved Julie Andrews, and he loved working with her.
I will say, I've got to throw out my favorite film of your dad's. I think 36 Hours is incredibly underrated.
Oh, okay.
The fact that people don't talk about that one, I love it.
They don't know about it. I don't.
Right.
But that is a weird movie.
Yeah, I always throw that one out when I'm trying to talk to other people about Jim. I always say, I talk about the plot, and then by the end they're like, I have to watch this movie. But of course, seeing him and Eva Marie Saint, who I absolutely adore as well, in one film together as well, and Rod Taylor.
Well, she was in Grand Prix with my dad also.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if they shared any.
I don't think they did. Yeah, they were separate.
They didn't. But they, personally, we were great friends with her and her husband. So they were great family friends. I mean, I used to go on vacation with them all the time because the kids were my age. And they were practically neighbors as well. So we saw a lot of them.
That's amazing. Oh, my goodness. I love that. I didn't get the chance to mention it when you guys were discussing it earlier, but I did see Grand Prix at the Cinerama Dome during the fest.
Oh, okay.
I did. I absolutely had to. Racing and James Garner and Eva Marie Saint, like the fact that she was going to be there as well, I couldn't pass it up. They passed out like replica programs that they had the whole same design as they did during the premiere. And in the lobby, They had one of the cameras that was used to film it.
Oh, neat.
And then they had, of course, Leonard Maltin interviewing Eva Marie Saint, who said that she didn't really care for the film anymore because it was so loud.
It is loud. I'll give her that.
Yeah. My personal experience watching that film, I will say it was either a smart decision or a not smart decision. I sat in the front row.
Wow.
That's commitment,
because
Sam.
I wanted to be as close to Eva Marie Saint as possible for the interview after the film was over. I ended up being like 5 feet away, which was amazing. But on the flip side, I had to watch basically this pre-IMAX film leaning back with the sound blasting.
Oh, my God. Oh, wow.
And that's one way to experience the film for the first time. I'll tell you that much. But of course, it really shines in that medium. And,
yeah,
I mean, there were so few Cinerama films, but in particular, that one had to be Cinerama.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because of the camera work, the montage editing, and all of that. It really makes it a better experience, I'll say.
Well, I was curious. I know you don't watch a lot of your dad's films now, but what was it like as a child? Were there kind of those family trips to premieres? Did you watch his movies when they came out as a family? What was that interaction with his films like growing up?
I think I was there a lot when he was filming because back in the day, movies took a long time to make. Sometimes they took 9 months to make. I was there during the filming of Grand Prix as well. In fact, I actually got to go. My dad put me in his lap in the race car.
Oh, my God.
I got to go around the racetrack at Brands Hatch. I think I was only like 8 at the time. But I did go to premieres with, my parents. But we never, sat around and watched the films. I mean, we went to premieres because that was part of my dad's job, was to show up at the premiere to promote it. But no, it was not. I do remember one time when I was really little and my dad made a film with Doris Day. He made 2 films with Doris Day, but the one where it's the thrill of it all, and he drives the car into the swimming pool.
Yeah.
Iconic scene.
For some reason, I don't know why, but for some reason, my mom took me to an actual theater to see that film. And I was too little to really understand what was going on. So I started screaming in the theater because I thought my dad was drowning.
Oh, no.
And I think maybe that was the last time I went to a theater like that when I was little to see my dad because I couldn't separate it because I was too little.
Wow.
That's such a fantastic story. That reminds me of the story that Mike Douglas tells about screaming in the theater when he sees Kirk Douglas in Lust for Life when he cuts his ear off.
Oh, my God. I know. When you're little, I never really got it. I didn't understand, why people were so interested in my dad. I know why I was so interested in my dad because he was my dad. But I didn't understand when I was a kid growing up what was the deal? Why wouldn't they leave us alone during dinner? Or, I didn't really get it. It took me a while. A slow learner.
Well, we did have another listener question. I don't know if you'd be able to answer this, and I was really surprised if somebody asked it, but somebody wanted to know what your dad's favorite book was, what he liked to read.
He loved Larry McMurtry.
That makes a lot of sense.
He read a lot. Well, he did Streets of Laredo, isn't that Larry McMurtry? My dad read a lot. He was a very, very avid reader, and he loved mysteries and things like that. But I think probably one of his favorites was Larry McMurtry.
All of us talk about noir and all this talk about your dad. I keep wondering what he would have been like in a noir.
Well, he technically did make a noir. Marlowe is a bit of a noir.
Yeah, Marlowe.
It's from the 70s, but
It's not quite as black and white. Oh my gosh. If you haven't seen Marlo, oh my gosh, I've seen parts of it, but I'm not going to give it away, but there's some really cool parts.
Oh my gosh, it's great.
Recording with Bruce Lee. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Rita Moreno.
I think it was Bruce Lee's. Yeah, exactly. Bruce Lee's first film, I believe.
I think it is.
That's a great version of Marlo for sure.
Yeah, now that you mention it,
is 36 hours? Wait, is Children's Hour film noir?
I don't think so.
I'm just thinking about that. I think
and Audrey Hepburn. It's a weird kind of dark, kind of strange kind of film. But
I really
who doesn't love Audrey Hepburn?
I know. It's amazing to watch some of the. To go back to talking to Rita Moreno about him, looking at some of the women that he worked opposite. I mean, titans of that time, like Doris Day and Audrey, and the fact that he is able to hold his own. Some actors of that time period, felt really intimidated by having a bigger female star act opposite them. Like think of like the Clark Gables and stuff like that. But I mean, he was such a great partner in every sense of the word to the women that he acted opposite. It was a great unity of balance between them where no one really overshadowed each other. You don't get that with a lot of pairings anymore.
What's interesting is my dad really didn't have the kind of like Hollywood ego that most people had. And so he just didn't go there. And it's really funny. I learned not that long ago that one time my parents were somewhere like at a premiere party or something. They didn't really go to parties, but like my dad would go out for work to promote something. But they ran into Cary Grant. And Cary Grant pulled my dad aside and said, you are the only one that can hold a candle. And what he meant was, Cary Grant was the Mr. Debonair, light comedy, dramatic, whatever. He could do everything. What he meant was really that my dad was the only other actor who could do what he did.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's absolutely accurate.
My dad's jaw was on the ground. He was floored. And I'll tell you another thing is that John Wayne's favorite actor was my dad.
And when you got the Duke supporting you, I mean, that's kind of the seal of approval right there. I was going to say, I mean, aside from maybe horror and musical? I mean, those are really the only two genres. I don't think your dad ever did.
Picture Victoria's a musical.
That's true. That's okay. Totally. Yeah, that's okay. He doesn't sing, but which would be very interesting to see. But okay, so horror. Horror is really the only genre I don't think he necessarily stepped into, which would be cool.
So. He once said that somebody asked him, how come you don't do nudity? And he goes, I don't do horror films.
Oh my gosh. That's a perfect answer. Oh my gosh. Sam, do you have anything else you want to throw out?
Not that I can think of. This is such a cool opportunity and experience talking to you about him. I love all these stories. It's so amazing to hear.
Well, we'll throw out one last question. I know that we've talked so much about legacy and his book and all of that, but for you, what is the one thing about your dad that either people don't know or that has been misconstrued, but something that, the great kind of like takeaway that you would want people who are learning about your dad to know?
I would say my dad in real life was the funniest person I ever knew. He was just absolutely hilarious. Just in real life. He had a look, a double take, a quip. He just was hilarious. He's just so funny. And he was quiet in some respects, and he was a complex person. But I really think my dad was just so funny. He was so witty. Usually when people see my dad, he's regurgitating dialogue verbatim. And so he does it in his own way, in his own manner. But in real life, he was just so funny.
That's awesome. Well, Gigi, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk with us. where can fans find and get in touch with you online, learn about your charities, anything you want to throw out? Feel free to throw it out here.
Oh, that'd be lovely. Well, my charity, if you love animals or want to help me carry on his legacy, you can go to www.jgarf.org, O-R-G, so it's jgarf.org, and check out our photos and some of the rescues and some of the animals. And we have an in memoriam section if you want to post your animal up there for a donation. And if you want to support us, I am on Twitter. I'm very active on there. It's Mavrocks Girl, so it's a combination of Maverick and Rockford. Mavrocks Girl at Mavrocks Girl, Gigi and James Garner on Twitter.
And then the official Facebook, what is that? So people don't end up going to the wrong one.
If you go to my Twitter, it's pinned at the top. But it's basically the Facebook.com/James official James Garner. So it's official James Garner. It's not the fan Facebook. Mm-hmm. It's just the official James Garner.
And you told me you know that you found the right one when the banner is his autograph.
Yeah, his signature is at the top.
And then one more thing I wanted to throw out. You also mentioned that you have merch.
I do. I have a bunch of just funny merchandise that I came up with and designed to help the charity. All the proceeds go to my 501c3. I have a store on Teespring, and it's the official James Garner. If you go to teespring.com/official James Garner, I think there's a dash in between. It's on teespring.com and it says official James Garner. So hopefully it'll come up. But I have some silly things on there, like I have What Would Jimbo Do t-shirts and mugs. And I have some photos from, I like Jimbo for president. I have a mug for that. And I have some just fun stuff up here that I have a original artwork. Remember the Yellow Pages ad for the Rockford Files? Mm-hmm. I have the original artwork from the show, the graphics. And so I made t-shirts, yellow t-shirts out of the Yellow Pages ad. And I have some original artwork of Rockford for Rockford and things like that. People have been very kind to support me, and all the proceeds go to my 501c3. Thanks, guys.
That's going to close out this edition of Ticklish Business. As always, if you want to follow what Samantha and I are doing, you can follow me on Twitter at Journeys_film. I also have my classic film website at journeysandclassicfilm.com. If you want to follow Drea Clark, she's at the Drea Clark. She also does her other show, Who Shot Ya, over at Maximum Fun. And Samantha Ellis, where can fans find and get in touch with you? What's going on with your blog?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Classic Film Geek, and you can find my blog at musingsofaClassicFilmAddict.com, and you can find my Cooking with the Stars post every month at ClassicMovieHub.com.
And you can always email the podcast your questions, comments, suggestions at ticklishbiz, that's B-I-Z, at gmail.com. And our Twitter, to keep you in the know about what's going on, is at ticklish_biz. If you want to help the podcast out by supporting us via Patreon, you can do that over at patreon.com/ticklishbiz. You get these episodes 48 hours early. You get access to all sorts of pins, DVDs, and Blu-ray gifts. We have our new here, the Taylor, that also allows you to guest on a future episode. If you want to do that, you can find all that information over at patreon.com/ticklishbiz. Well, we're going to keep our road to 100 episodes going. We don't really know what our schedule is because we're beholden to special guests. So hopefully you will be back with us next time when we hope to have another big guest talking about classic films. Bye-bye.